I received messages asking for sex, but to keep it quiet.
The pilot put his hand on the top of my thigh.
There was one team member who made comments about my breasts and bum in my work coveralls.
These women were once members of an elite squadron inside the Royal Air Force. A dream job that turned into a nightmare of sexual harassment, sleaze and bullying. Now, for the first time, they're speaking out on camera about an ordeal that has shamed one of Britain's most iconic symbols.
Some pilots were untouchable. That's what they thought they were, and that is why it was so dangerous.
Cameras ready.
You can see why we call this manoeuvre the corkscrew.
Dubbed the Diamond Nine, the Red Arrows are a national treasure. Their trademark red, white and blue smoke, framing the UK's most memorable moments. Being on the squadron is a coveted job for pilots and ground crew. A career high. But for some, it became a desperate low. Trapped in a toxic culture of predatory behaviour that's destroyed lives.
The Red Arrows were my heroes growing up. I went to air shows. I thought that they were the best of the best, and that's what I wanted to be part of.
We're calling this woman Kate. Her words are voiced by an actor. She was a young officer in training when she was sent to work for the Royal Air Force Aerobatic team, or Red Arrows, a few years ago.
It almost felt like a dream. My first day, I was so excited. I had a brief from the warrant officer when I first joined the squadron. And it was very much, just be careful. You're a young junior trainee. You could be a notch on a crew member's bedpost. Basically, just be very careful with your reputation.
And how did that make you feel?
I was gobsmacked. I felt really uncomfortable, almost dirty, actually.
She quickly found out why women received such warnings, as some of Kate's male teammates made excuses to visit her office.
They see it as fresh meat, being on squadron, and they all kind of wanted to ogle me. So it was almost being in like a fishbowl, really.
How would you describe the culture that you witnessed and experienced?
On the Reds, absolutely toxic. Some pilots were untouchable. That's how they thought they were, and that was why it was so dangerous.
Being on the Red Arrows gives the display pilots, in particular, a kind of celebrity status. Poster boys for the RAAF. There's only been one female pilot so far. With excellence as their motto, the Red Arrows perform daring stunts to adoring crowds at home and abroad. Until 2022, the squadron was based here at RAF Scampton in Lincolnshire. It became Kate's home and workplace in between travelling away with the team during the display season.
They do have special treatment. You know, they have sponsorship deals. They are very well looked after.
An unofficial yearbook captures the environment. Then there was the banter.
Pilots rated their displays on women. So if it was an incredible display, it was a Meghan Markle. If it was a good display, it was Sienna Miller. And if it was an awful display, it was Susan Boyle. And I just thought, gosh, I can't believe in this day and age that they are, using a display and putting women's names on it in terms of attractiveness.
For Kate, the banter became more predatory on a night out with the squadron while staying at a hotel for an air show.
A lot of us stayed behind in the bar, and when the bar closed, one pilot ordered additional drinks and a bottle of Prosecco and said, "Oh, come to my room and have drinks with the other pilot." I was a trainee. I assumed this would be safe. We were told to kind of socialise, and in looking back, I would absolutely change the clock now. But I went and it was fine. We were all talking. It was the same as the bar. And then it kind of started to change. And it felt more predatory, especially when one of the pilots put his hand on the top of my thigh, in front of the other one, who saw and didn't say anything. And that's when I made my excuses to leave.
The two pilots then started messaging her privately, asking her to come back to their individual rooms.
So I had one of them messaging me on WhatsApp, one of them on Facebook, and trying to call me to get me to go to their individual room separately and carry on drinking. And this is quite late. It was like 3 a.m, so it wasn't the most responsible. But not only that, they were meant to be flying the next day.
She says a barrage of unwanted texts from Pilot 1 kept coming over the following weeks. By then, the squadron was on tour overseas, living out of hotels, working and socialising together, staying out late and drinking. On one night out, Kate found herself targeted yet again by the same pilot.
I was plied with alcohol. And I woke up with that pilot in my room the next day, not really knowing what had happened.
She says she had been in no fit state to consent to any kind of intimacy.
And then, he very much told me if I told anybody, I would be kicked out of the Air Force. I would lose my job and be sent home immediately. I was so disappointed in myself, and I blamed myself.
To this day, Kate finds it very difficult to talk about exactly what happened to her that night and over the next few months, when she says the pilot continued to pursue her. She says he turned other pilots against her and used emotional threats to coerce her into continuing the relationship and staying quiet. She claims he even wiped her phone to remove their exchanges as he knew the passcode. The only texts she has left are those she'd thought to screenshot.
Did you confront him about that?
Yes.
Did he admit it?
No, he has denied it throughout. The behaviour for me, it starts with that whole kind of grooming and chatting. Then it goes into sexual harassment, and then it goes past the point of appropriate. And you have no one to turn to because there are hardly any women on squadron, let alone officers or trainee officers.
Kate didn't know it then, but she was about to embark on a fight for justice that would take her to the top of the RAAF and pave the way for many more women in the military to speak out. Her journey began when, isolated and desperate, she decided to tell her bosses what was going on. Her concerns should have triggered an immediate investigation into the pilot, not least because the RAAF owed a particular duty of care to protect a junior officer in training. Instead, he carried on flying, while it was Kate's career that faltered, as her chain of command failed her at every turn. It started with a line manager who seemed more concerned about what the tabloid press might say.
He said if this gets out, the Red Tops will love it.
That was he was most worried about?
Yeah, he was more worried about the reputation than if there was a cultural issue on the Reds.
She went up a level to a more senior boss. But in a text exchange, he told her he didn't intend to pursue the matter further formally and instead hoped a civil environment could be achieved. Despite being much more junior than him, Kate didn't give up, saying she still had major concerns and asking for another meeting. He said he could see her the following week.
I never had that meeting with him.
Do you know why?
I don't think he wanted to address it. I was a disruptor.
By this point, Kate says her mental health was suffering. Her faith in the Air Force had been shattered, and she decided to leave. Turning to the then head of the RAF's Officer Training College at Cranwell, Kate says she again spoke up in an interview on her way out, but she accuses the college boss of failing to take meaningful action.
I told her that there was a toxic pocket on the Red Arrows of behaviours that needed to be looked into, and she said, "I'm sorry to hear about your experiences. Good luck in the future."
The virtual meeting was with then Air Commodore Soraya Marshall. A witness who attended with Kate claimed he too recalls her speaking about harassment on the Red Arrows. But an RAF source said now Air Vice Marshal Soraya Marshall categorically disputes the allegations, claiming she confirmed the service person mentioned a bad experience on the Red Arrows, but didn't provide any detail that would have enabled any form of investigation to be initiated. The head of Cranwell's actions during and after the interview, when she subsequently discussed support to the individual with the relevant chain of command, were correct and reasonable. The source claimed a second witness backed up this opposing account.
It got to the point that I've done everything I felt I could, I was raising the alarm. Nobody was listening to me. And then I ended up in hospital, very mentally unwell.
Kate made a serious attempt on her life. She attributes her survival, in part, to reaching out to this former army officer.
It's not the whole military that's the problem, it's the feral packs that we...
Diane Allen went public about her own experiences of unacceptable behaviours while serving in the military because she wanted the whole armed forces to have their Me Too moment. She's been supporting Kate and other Red Arrows victims ever since.
You see this same modus operandi, the MO going on, which is effectively an individual brings a issue, a complaint to someone's attention. And in that predatory pocket, that toxic pocket, what you see is that then they all close ranks. They close down and they make that person's life hell.